Now that we have a data frame, the big question is how do we access the parts of it that we care about? Whether that is a single column, a single row, or maybe a subset of both. So over here we have our original data frame where we have ID, names, and scores, all of them as columns. And this is the data frame that we get out of that. Now, if I wanted to get maybe all the names that I have in this data frame, all I need to do is data frame and then the name of the column that I'm interested in. And that will bring back all the names out of this one, all of them associated with their indices as well. And keep in mind, this here is a pandas series, meaning that you can do any of the series operations that we learned about in previous videos. So this first method here is how you would access any item by their columns. So what if you needed to access your data by their rows? Well, pandas gives you one of two ways that you can access your items by rows, whether that is by their labeled index or by their positional index. So I could do DataFrame.location and access everything in the row labeled by index 0. So this one right here. If I run that, here we go. We get that the ID is student 1, the name is Alice, and the score is 85. Now, very similar to that right now is if I do DataFrame.iLock, and let me bring that up. I could do give me everything for the row in the positional index of 1. So if I run this, here we go, we get student 2, Bob, and 92. So these are looking very identical, except that, as we've mentioned, this is using the labeled index, not the positional index. So if we had changed our data frame, let me do this here right here. So if I'll do data frame set index to ID and do that in place, and let's see what data frame look like. Now I could do data frame the location and get me the item for student 1. Right here we get all the columns for that one row, and just keep in mind now, because this is no longer part of the data frame itself, is just the labeled index, that's why we don't get it in the result over here. We can also get multiple rows at once, so let me bring my data frame back. Actually, let's copy this, bring it back over here, execute the cell. All right, let's start from here. I could do give me the data frame with the positional index of both 0 and 2. And if I run that, I get row number 0 and row number 2. Similarly, now that we're back to numerical indices, I could do something like data frame, that location, and get me everything from 0 to 2, or let's just do 1 to 2. And if I run that, here we go, we get the second and the third columns back. Now, would this work with labeled data sets as well? Let's go ahead and find out. I'll change my data frame again to have a labeled index instead. So here we go. In place, true. Show me the data frame. Here we go. I could still do data frame, dot location, and I want student 1 through student 2. If I run that, here we go, I get the first 2 rows here. I can change that to go all the way to 3, and it will work just fine. I can keep updating them, and the way it works is that it looks at the entire data frame and it finds the first item with that labeled index, and it will find all the items from that index until the next one that you specify. Now, what if I want a specific row and maybe specific columns as well? I could do something like data frame dot location, and I'm interested in all rows for the scores column. This here is going to return all the scores by all their indices here. I could do the same thing where I would do, well, get me data frame dot location. I'm only interested in student 2, and I want to get their names. And here you go, you get Bob as a result. All right, so to wrap up, to access your data frame by column, all you need to do is use your normal square brackets as we did right over here, so you can get all the items by their columns. If you want to get something by row, then you can use either the look or the location or the index location to get them either by label or by positional index. And this here is going to work whether you're using your default numerical indices or your actual labeled indices that you specified yourself. And you could also use the location function here to get all the rows for a specific column or a specific row and a specific column, depending on what your use case is. Next, we're going to take this a step further and learn how we can filter our data frames based on certain conditions.